The account of Hiroshima and Nagasaki is one of gigantic misfortune and significant historical significance. These two Japanese cities, bustling with life and vital to Japan's war efforts, were transformed into sites of unparalleled destruction in August 1945. At that time, Hiroshima was a city of both military and industrial importance, home to various military headquarters, supply depots and factories. Nagasaki, similarly, was a key port and industrial center heavily involved in the production of war materials. The people living in these cities weren't just going about their daily lives, they were actively contributing to the war effort. Tragically, this also included children, who were part of the workforce in factories and other wartime facilities. It looked like Japan wouldn't pause and would never surrender. However, the United States was working on something incredibly devastating at the same time: the development of the atomic bomb, which would forever change history. The project, codenamed the Manhattan Project, demonstrated the horrific power of nuclear weapons during the Trinity test, paving the way for their use in warfare. As World War II raged on, the United States built 2 atomic bombs for use against Japan, believing such a display of power was necessary to end the war. The first bomb, codenamed Little Boy, was a gun-type atomic bomb. It used a simple design that fired one piece of uranium-235 into another, triggering a powerful explosive force. At approximately 2:45 a.m. on August 6, 1945, the Enola Gay, a Boeing B-29 Superfortress, took off from North Field on Tinian Island. The flight plan called for a direct course to Hiroshima, a city chosen for its military significance and lack of previous bombing, which would demonstrate the bomb's full destructive power. At around 8:09 a.m., the Enola Gay began its bombing run. Major Thomas Farabee, the bombardier, assumed control and focused on the AIOI bridge, the designated aiming point. The bomb bay doors opened and Little Boy was released at precisely 8:15 a.m. from an altitude of about 31,000 feet. The city below, with a population of approximately 350,000 people, was completely unprepared for the sheer magnitude of destruction about to befall them. After releasing the bomb, the Enola Gay performed a sharp turn to avoid the shockwaves from the blast. Even at a distance, the crew felt the impact of the explosion, which caused the aircraft to shake. They observed the mushroom cloud rising over the city, and knew the mission had been successful, though they couldn't fully grasp the extent of the devastation. When Little Boy exploded, it unleashed a destructive force equivalent to approximately 15 kilotons of TNT. The initial blast, centered over the Shima Surgical Clinic in downtown Hiroshima, created a fireball with temperatures reaching around 7,000 degrees Fahrenheit, roughly 70% as hot as the surface of the sun. At ground zero, the intense heat vaporized anything and anyone in the immediate vicinity. It's estimated that the blast's direct impact killed an estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people instantly. Human bodies were incinerated in an instant, leaving only shadows imprinted on walls and sidewalks, known as hibakusha shadows. These shadows were created by the intense heat, which bleached the surrounding surfaces, leaving dark outlines where bodies had blocked the thermal radiation. In the area just beyond ground zero, the intense thermal radiation caused severe burns, often to the extent of charring the skin and muscle tissue. These thermal burns were among the most common injuries suffered by those who survived the initial blast. Skin would slough off in sheets and the pain was excruciating. Many victims described the feeling as if their bodies were on fire. These burns often led to severe infections, as medical facilities were overwhelmed and unable to provide adequate care for the sheer number of injured people. Many succumbed to their wounds within days or weeks. In the weeks and months following the bombings, the survivors, known as hibakusha, faced increased risks of leukemia, cancers, and other chronic illnesses due to radiation exposure. And that wasn't all. The force of the blast also caused a powerful shockwave that destroyed buildings, uprooted trees, and hurled debris with lethal force. Many people were crushed under collapsed buildings or struck by flying debris. The overpressure from the blast wave caused horrific injuries, such as ruptured eardrums, crushed organs, and broken bones. Those who were inside buildings when the blast occurred were often trapped or buried under rubble, facing a grim struggle for survival. Further from the epicenter, the effects of radiation exposure became a predominant cause of injury and death. The gamma rays and neutrons released by the explosion penetrated deep into the bodies of those exposed, damaging cells and tissues. This led to acute radiation sickness in the short term, characterized by symptoms like severe gastrointestinal distress, bleeding from orifices and hair loss. In the long term, radiation exposure increased the risk of cancers, particularly leukemia, thyroid cancer, and solid tumors. One eyewitness account is from a woman named Reiko Yamada. Reiko was an 11-year-old girl at the time of the Hiroshima bombing. Her experience provides a vivid and harrowing account of the events and aftermath. Reiko was with her classmates in the schoolyard under the blazing summer sun when she suddenly heard a child yell, "Look! A B-29. She looked up and saw the silver glinting B-29 plane flying high in the blue sky, trailing a white vapor arc. That's pretty, she thought. The next moment there was a white flash and she was blinded. She described a brilliant flash of light and a powerful blast that knocked her off her feet. After regaining consciousness, she witnessed scenes of unimaginable destruction. Buildings were flattened, fires raged everywhere, and the sky was filled with black smoke. Reiko saw people with severe burns and injuries, their skin hanging off, wandering in a daze. She heard the cries of people begging for water and help, but there was little anyone could do amidst the chaos. According to Reiko, the loss of life was immense. Due to the summer heat, the bodies of those not vaporized instantly had to be cremated quickly to prevent the spread of disease. Horrifically, they were piled into an empty school pool, covered with wood, and burned. Many of these people were never identified, as some were burned beyond recognition. No one was prepared for what had happened or what would happen after the blast. Because a radioactive atomic weapon had never been used, no one understood the aftermath or how radiation would affect the human body. There was no evacuation plan, and doctors sent to the city to help survivors had no idea they were putting their own lives at risk, while only prolonging the suffering of the victims who had survived the initial blast. Japan initially reacted by extinguishing fires, rescuing people from rubble, and restoring running water and electricity. However, despite the unprecedented destruction and loss of life, Japan did not immediately surrender. Thus, the United States dropped a second bomb codenamed Fat Man on the city of Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. This bomb, more powerful than Little Boy, had an explosive yield of around 21 kilotons of TNT. The geography of Nagasaki, with its hills and valleys, somewhat mitigated the bomb's impact compared to the flat landscape of Hiroshima. However, the destruction was still massive, with another 70,000 people killed instantly and many more succumbing to injuries and radiation sickness in the following days, weeks, and years. Death from radiation peaked around 3 to 4 weeks after the blast. The explosion of Fat Man created a fireball even hotter than that of Little Boy, with a temperature of around 10,800 degrees Fahrenheit. To put that into perspective, the surface temperature of the Sun is around 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. That said, the fireball from the Fat Man blast was slightly hotter than the Sun's surface. The immense thermal radiation instantly vaporized people, leaving similar haunting shadows. In the aftermath, Nagasaki, like Hiroshima, became a scene of sheer devastation. Survivors faced severe burns, radiation poisoning, and traumatic injuries. The psychological trauma inflicted on the survivors was profound. Many of the atomic bomb survivors, or hibakusha, suffered from severe emotional and psychological distress, haunted by. Here is the text properly punctuated and formatted for clarity. The recollections of the revulsions they saw, the social disgrace related to radiation exposure, also caused further suffering as survivors faced discrimination and shunning in their own communities. This stigma was made worse by the visible physical scars and long-term medical issues that many survivors carried. The shadows left by the disintegrated bodies, an unpleasant reminder of the atomic bombings, can still be seen in some areas of Hiroshima and Nagasaki today. These shadows serve as a grave testament to the devastating power of nuclear weapons and the human cost of their use. Remembrances and museums in both cities preserve these artifacts and educate visitors about the horrors of nuclear warfare, emphasizing the importance of peace and demilitarization. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki marked the sole use of nuclear weapons in warfare. They demonstrated the devastating power of these weapons and highlighted the urgent need for global efforts to prevent their future use. The destruction caused by the bombs and the ensuing radiation effects on human bodies underscored the indiscriminate nature of nuclear warfare, where civilians and soldiers alike suffer unimaginable consequences. The most frightening aspect of this reality is that the modern world possesses a far greater number of nuclear weapons, each vastly more powerful than those dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. A nuclear conflict in today's world would result in catastrophic loss of life, environmental destruction, and long-term health consequences on a scale far beyond what occurred in 1945. By acknowledging and educating everyone about the true extent of human suffering caused by the atomic bombings in Japan, we take a step toward a more informed and conscientious global community. Let this understanding be a foundation upon which we strive to build a safer and more peaceful world, honoring the memory of those who perished and those who survived one of the darkest chapters in human history. Music. Nuclear warheads are the ultimate weapons of mass destruction. According to recent estimates, approximately 12,500 nuclear warheads exist globally. Russia possesses about 5,900, and the United States has around 5,244 nuclear weapons. However, the majority of these weapons are either in storage or retired. In fact, both the United States and Russia have only around 1,600 active deployed strategic nuclear warheads each. This still amounts to 3,200 nuclear warheads, enough to cause massive devastation. Other countries officially recognized as possessing nuclear weapons include China, France, and the United Kingdom, but their stockpiles are much smaller. For instance, China has approximately 500 operational nuclear weapons, according to the U.S. Department of Defense. The specific details of nuclear weapons, including their capabilities, are classified. What we do know is that the most powerful of these weapons have a yield of around 1.2 megatons, equivalent to 1 million tons of conventional explosives such as artillery shells, bombs, and other high-explosive devices. Most nuclear missiles, or ICBMs, can carry 6 to 8 separate nuclear warheads with an average yield of 400 kilotons each. However, there have been bombs far more powerful and devastating. You've likely heard of the famous nuclear device, Tsar Bomba, also known as Big Ivan. It was the single most powerful nuclear weapon ever created and tested on Earth, producing the largest man-made explosion ever recorded in history. New research and observations put the yield of the explosion from Tsar Bomba at 57 megatons, or the equivalent of 57 million tons of TNT. Despite its devastating power, the bomb was essentially useless because it was too large and heavy to be considered a practical weapon. Developing such a weapon in 1961 was a monumental endeavor. It was so massive that a Tupolev Tu-95V bomber had to be specially modified, removing its cargo bays and fuselage fuel tanks, just to carry the 27-ton bomb. It measured an incredible 26 feet in length and nearly 7 feet in diameter. Interestingly, the Tsar Bomba was designed to be a 100-megaton bomb. It was a 3-stage thermonuclear bomb that used a fission-type atomic bomb as the first stage to compress a fusion-based second stage, which in turn compressed a much larger fusion-based third stage. Evidence suggests that the Tsar Bomba used multiple third stages, not just one. It could have yielded more than 100 megatons, but the bomb had a scaled-down design involving an inert lead tamper instead of a uranium-238 fusion tamper. Had the bomb incorporated a uranium tamper, it would have produced a yield exceeding 100 megatons, as uranium tamps greatly amplify explosions by fissioning uranium atoms with fast neutrons from the fusion reaction. However, using a lead tamper eliminated fast fission and made the explosion much cleaner and smaller. This decision also allowed the bomber that dropped the weapon to fly far enough away to survive the blast. Nevertheless, the explosion was still enormous. The bomb was detonated over the Michishika Bay test site on the remote Novaya Zemlya island, 4 kilometers above ground. It produced a massive mushroom cloud more than 37 kilometers high. The flash of the explosion was visible 620 kilometers away, and capable of causing third-degree burns on anyone within 62 kilometers. It would have been visible from Earth's orbit if there had been astronauts to witness it. Ultimately, the Tsar Bomba had no strategic value beyond intimidation, but it failed to terrify anyone. American scientists pointed out that its size alone made it strategically impractical. Furthermore, testing showed that a 100 megaton bomb produces only about 4 times the energy of a 10 megaton bomb, but does not cause 4 times more damage. This has to do with the nonlinear effects of explosions. A 100 megaton blast is only marginally more destructive than a 10 megaton bomb. However, the weight of nuclear weapons scales linearly. A 100 megaton bomb weighs roughly 10 times more than a 10 megaton bomb, making it significantly harder to deliver via missile or plane. Since then, nuclear weapons have become smaller and more of a deterrent against nuclear war. However, recent nuclear saber rattling has raised concerns. The possibility of nuclear war remains a stark reality. In fact, the doomsday clock is currently set at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest it has ever been since its creation. New missiles have also been making headlines. The Russian Rs-28 Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile, nicknamed Satan II, can carry 15 lightweight nuclear warheads or multiple re-entry vehicles, MIRVs, each capable of targeting a different location. Meanwhile, the U.S. Air Force's LGM-35A Sentinel ICBM, a next-generation missile replacing the decades-old Minuteman III, can also carry multiple warheads, including the 475-kiloton W-87 nuclear warhead. Given the capabilities of modern ICBMs and the devastating power of nuclear weapons, survival in an all-out nuclear conflict would depend on various factors, such as where one lives and how quickly one can find shelter. However, the outcome is clear: there would be no winners in a nuclear war. If one side launches nuclear missiles, the other will retaliate, leading to unimaginable destruction and suffering. One side recognizes the send-off and counterattacks with their own atomic strike. Before long, long-range rockets from the submarines of both sides are sent off. The principal nuclear strikes create electromagnetic pulses that fry hardware and power networks. The next targets are command and control centers, as well as other nuclear launch sites. All land-based ICBMs require 30 minutes after launch to reach their targets. Each nuclear warhead that survives air defenses would detonate with a fireball nearly as hot as the core of the sun, followed by a blast wave that would disintegrate anything caught in its path. Any survivors in areas not directly impacted by the blast would have to contend with firestorms and elevated levels of radioactivity. However, the worst would yet be to come. All the black carbon smoke from the nuclear blasts and firestorms they created would end up high in the stratosphere, where high-altitude jet streams would spread it across the skies. Some studies suggest this black smoke and dust would cause a nuclear winter, cooling the planet by 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Without supplies, those people still alive would end up starving or succumbing to the effects of radiation sickness. We truly have no idea how many survivors there would be in a nuclear conflict. Yet could this nuclear war obliterate the planet as in break it apart or actually explode it? That's not a possibility. Even Tsar Bomba was nothing compared to what planet Earth is capable of enduring. The estimated yield of the Krakatoa volcanic eruption in 1883 was the equivalent of 200 megatons of TNT, 4 times the yield of Tsar Bomba. The eruption sent 5 cubic miles of rock into the sky. The volcano expelled an ink-black cloud that spread over the sky, leaving the land in complete darkness. Ash from the blast nearly reached the edge of space, about 50 miles up, and filtered out enough solar radiation to lower global temperatures by almost 1 degree Fahrenheit for an entire year after the eruption. Nothing man-made can ever come close. When we compare it to the largest explosion ever to occur on Earth, the Chicxulub impact event, the difference is staggering. The Chicxulub asteroid, which struck the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico around 66 million years ago, is believed to have been between 10 and 15 kilometers wide. It was traveling so fast, around 44,712 miles per hour, that the impact formed a crater 93 miles wide. Estimates suggest that the kinetic energy released by the asteroid upon impact was around 72 teratons, equivalent to 72 million megatons of TNT. Our tiny nuclear weapons couldn't achieve anything comparable. Even if you could somehow gather all the nuclear warheads on the planet into one pile and detonate them simultaneously, it wouldn't cause remotely the same level of damage that Chicxulub did. We're talking about a detonation equivalent to 2 million Tsar bombas. Despite the massive impact and explosion nearly wiping out all life on Earth, the planet is still spinning and still teeming with life. In fact, Earth has endured numerous asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, and earthquakes that make our most powerful nuclear weapons seem trivial by comparison. What about the Moon? Could we destroy our satellite if it ever threatened our planet like in some of those science fiction movies? Let's not forget that the Moon is 1/4 the size of Earth, with a diameter of 2,159 miles. If you fired all the nuclear weapons we have at the Moon, it would shrug them off as though someone were throwing a handful of pebbles at it. Forget about blowing up the planet or the Moon with nuclear weapons. However, there is one weapon that could potentially end all life on Earth for good. If this doomsday device were ever designed and used, it would be a terrifying weapon known as the cobalt bomb. Some sources have hinted that cobalt increases nuclear yield, but that's not the case. The truth is more horrifying. While it lacks explosive power, it compensates with radioactivity. This bomb, also known as a salted or dirty bomb, rains down massive amounts of radioactive material over a wide area after detonation. If the explosive fireball and shockwave didn't kill you, the enhanced amount of radioactive fallout would. Physicist Leo Szilard first described this concept in 1950, not as a suggestion to create such a weapon, but as a warning about the potential for nuclear technology to reach the point of ending all human life on Earth. A true doomsday device. How would this Armageddon device work? Remember how we discussed the lead tamper in Tsar Bomba earlier? It made the explosion cleaner in terms of radioactive fallout. A cobalt bomb would do the opposite. With a tamper made of cobalt surrounding a nuclear bomb, the intense neutron flux from the explosion would convert the cobalt into deadly cobalt-60, which is then vaporized by the blast. The vaporized cobalt would condense and fall back to Earth as dust and debris, contaminating everything it touched. Even if you managed to escape and hide in a fallout shelter, the high-energy gamma rays emitted by cobalt-60, with a half-life of 5.27 years, would pose a long-term threat. It would take years for the radiation to decay to safe levels. Maybe some resilient organisms like tardigrades or cockroaches could survive, but it's highly unlikely for humans. Just imagine if Tsar Bomba had used a cobalt tamper instead of lead in its multi-stage design. It would have produced an enormous amount of radioactive fallout, spreading over a much wider area than the fallout from the lead tamper. This massive amount of radioactive fallout would have caused widespread environmental destruction and severe health issues for everyone on the planet. These are terrifying scenarios to imagine. Let us all hope that no one ever devises such a weapon, and more importantly, that nuclear weapons are never used at all. As stated earlier, there are no winners in such a war. Every minute, the world's governments spend $139,000 on nuclear weapons. With that in mind, we ask ourselves, what would happen if we detonated every nuclear bomb in the Mariana Trench? First, let's explore the location where we would take all these nuclear weapons. The Mariana Trench is located in the Pacific Ocean, about 124 miles east of the Mariana Islands. It is a crescent-shaped feature measuring 1,554 miles long and 44 miles wide. The maximum known depth inside the trench is 36,201 feet. If we were to detonate all the nuclear weapons in the trench, we would need to choose the optimal location for what would be the largest nuclear explosion on Earth. The Mariana Trench is the deepest place on the planet and part of the Isobonin-Mariana subduction system. It forms the boundary between two large tectonic plates. The ancient Pacific Plate is slowly sliding under, or being subducted under, the smaller Philippine Sea Plate, which is forced to sink due to high gravitational energy into the mantle. As you can imagine, the Mariana Arc experiences frequent moderate to large earthquakes, ranging in magnitude from 7.0 to higher on the Richter scale. Some of these earthquakes are incredibly powerful and occur at varying depths, many deep within the Earth. Now, let's move on to the nuclear arsenal. To proceed, we would need all the available nuclear weapons on the planet, gathered from every country that possesses them. In nations like North Korea and China, it's impossible to know the exact number of nuclear weapons or their actual yields. So we'll stick to what we know for sure. Currently, there are about 3,750 active nuclear warheads worldwide and approximately 13,200 total nuclear warheads. These bombs and warheads vary in strength, with explosive yields ranging from 0.3 kilotons to 1.2 megatons. Modern warheads are far more devastating than the first nuclear weapon, named Gadget, tested in the Trinity test on July 16, 1945, in New Mexico, USA. A single modern nuclear mass destruction device could level an entire city. The United States and Russia hold around 88% of the world's nuclear arsenal. Using a general average yield of 0.54 kilotons, it is estimated that these weapons collectively have a total combined force of around 6,600 megatons. Adding the other 1,260 nuclear weapons possessed by various other nations, using the same calculation, the explosive total amounts to approximately 7,300 megatons. How much damage would this large number of weapons cause if exploded all at once? It would be hard to imagine such a massive explosion. To get an idea, let's look at the explosive power of some of the most powerful nuclear bombs ever built. The largest nuclear weapon ever tested was the USSR's Tsar Bomba, estimated to have a yield of about 57 megatons, the equivalent of 57 million tons of dynamite. If this type of weapon were dropped on a city, let's say New York, the heavy blast damage radius would be 5.1 miles. However, there was another nuclear weapon design that not many people know about, which would have been 4 times as powerful as the Tsar Bomba if it had been built. The U.S. detonated a nuclear bomb at Bikini Atoll in the Pacific in March 1954, resulting in a 15-megaton explosion, twice the average yield. As powerful and terrifying as it was, this explosion was only 1/4 the size of the Tsar Bomba. Yet one of the scientists who helped design the Castle Bravo weapon aimed for something much more powerful, a 10,000 megaton weapon, which would have been 670,000 times more powerful than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Such a massive bomb would have destroyed a continent and severely damaged the Earth. However, detonating the world's entire nuclear arsenal on the planet's surface would have a very different effect than detonating them all underwater. Tests of nuclear weapons underwater have been conducted before, such as Operation Hardtack in 1958 and Operation Wigwam in 1955. The latter used a 30-kiloton warhead detonated at 1,968 feet below the ocean's surface. These tests demonstrated that the most catastrophic consequence of underwater explosions was radioactive water. If we placed a hypothetical 7,300 megaton superweapon in the Challenger Deep, the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, and detonated it, it would create a massive bubble of hot gas. This bubble would then collapse quickly under the crushing pressure of 6 miles of water above it, equal to about 8 tons per square inch, or roughly 1,000 times the standard atmospheric pressure at sea level. This assumes, of course, that the superweapon survived the crushing depth before detonation. To detonate all these weapons at once, physicists Edward Teller and Stanislaw Ulam proposed a design known as the Teller-Ulam configuration, which combines nuclear devices into a linked chain. This design is useful for theoretical scenarios like this. In principle, you could link an infinite number of sub-bombs to create one massive bomb. Teller initially envisioned the super bomb as a weapon capable of producing an explosion equivalent to 100 million tons of TNT. Such a device would destroy most of California or entire countries like the UK, Ireland, or France. However, even at the estimated total of 7,300 megatons, all the weapons piled together in one place would have limited impact on Earth's tectonic activity. To truly disrupt the Earth's crust, a much larger force would be needed. For example, the Chicxulub impact event, caused by an asteroid 66 million years ago, had an estimated explosive yield of 100 million megatons. This impact left a 93-mile wide and 12-mile deep crater in the Gulf of Mexico, created seismic waves equivalent to a magnitude 10 earthquake, and nearly wiped out all life on Earth. If a 100 million megaton device were detonated in the Mariana Trench, it would create a 140-mile wide bubble of hot gas that would puncture the Earth's crust, exposing magma from the mantle. This would trigger tsunamis over 2.5 miles high, devastating California, the Pacific Northwest, Indonesia, China, and much of the Pacific Rim. The explosion would also eject massive amounts of rock and water into space, with fragments re-entering the atmosphere like meteors, causing global firestorms. The resulting earthquakes and steam columns would leave a 124-mile-wide scar of molten rock on the ocean floor. In comparison, the power of the world's current nuclear arsenal, while horrifying, would be insufficient to create such catastrophic effects. Even if detonated along a fault line, the total explosive power would be too dispersed to generate significant tectonic movement. Humanity has not yet achieved the destructive potential of natural events like asteroid impacts. Blue glow overhead. The resulting test Pascal B included a strong steel cap, estimating 10 centimeters in thickness, put on top of the measurement shaft close to the surface. It worked as both a K-Tor for test instruments and a defensive hindrance. The assessed weight of the substantial attachment was around 900 kilograms. The cap was assessed to achieve a speed of multiple times that of Earth's escape velocity, or roughly 200,000 kilometers per hour. To confirm the estimations, researchers set a high-speed camera close by. When Pascal B was exploded at the Nevada test site, it yielded an estimated 300 tons. The blaze resulting from the blast was multiple times brighter than the sun. The cap was effectively moved out of sight as anticipated, but the high-speed camera managed to capture it over the opening in only a single frame of the subsequent film. Researchers couldn't find any hint of the cap near the test site. Some guessed it was sent straight into space, though it might have disintegrated like a meteor rushing through Earth's atmosphere. Sometimes, researchers create an explosion so powerful it's difficult to predict its outcome. This was precisely what occurred with the largest nuclear weapon tested by the U.S. Castle Bravo. The Castle Bravo event was the initial trial of Operation Castle, a series of nuclear tests. A device referred to as shrimp used lithium deuteride as its fuel, resulting in an unexpected yield of 15 megatons of TNT, over 2.5 times greater than scientists anticipated. The blast scattered significant amounts of radioactive debris over an area exceeding 18,000 square kilometers. Shortly after detonation, an epic mushroom cloud spanning 7.2 kilometers in width emerged, eventually reaching an altitude of 39,500 meters. The powerful impact of the blast left a crater on the ocean floor measuring 2,000 meters in diameter and 75 meters in depth, devastating a significant portion of Bikini Atoll. Castle Bravo was approximately 1,000 times more powerful than the infamous Little Boy atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Within the history of nuclear tests lies a fascinating array of facts and accomplishments, but one mystery remains perplexing. In 1979, the Vela satellite, designed to monitor nuclear explosions from space, detected an unidentified double flash of light, known as the Vela incident. The double flash, which occurred in the South Atlantic Ocean, was significant because it closely matched the signature of a nuclear explosion. However, no country has ever claimed responsibility for the blast. The first flash was a short, intense burst of light, followed by a longer, distinctively shaped second flash. This raised suspicions of a potential nuclear test. The incident took place near the Prince Edward Islands, located between South Africa and Antarctica. Despite numerous investigations, the true cause of the Vela incident remains elusive. Various possibilities have been considered, including a technical glitch in the Vela satellite or a meteoroid impact. However, it's also speculated that this could have been a novel type of nuclear bomb that left no detectable fallout. Perhaps we'll never know for sure. While humans can unleash staggering explosions, the overwhelming power of nature's destructive force remains unparalleled. Throughout history, Earth has witnessed epic volcanic eruptions that dwarf even the most devastating man-made blasts. Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted in 1815 with an explosive force equivalent to 800 megatons of TNT, about 14 times Castle Bravo's yield. The sound produced as a result of this eruption could be heard more than 2,600 kilometers away. The eruption caused a global cooling effect, leading to the year without a summer in 1816. According to scientists, this eruption was rated a 7 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, VEI, which measures the intensity of volcanic eruptions. For comparison, the 2022 Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai eruption, which generated the most powerful pressure wave ever recorded in Earth's atmosphere, was rated only a 5. Although the Tambora eruption was massive, there have been even more colossal supereruptions rated WWII 8 or higher, with explosive forces equivalent to billions of megatons of TNT. The youngest Toba supereruption, which occurred in Indonesia approximately 74,000 years ago, was one of the most significant eruptions in Earth's history. Its explosive force, measured in the billions of megatons, caused global cooling that negatively impacted crop growth and may have triggered another volcanic eruption on the opposite side of the planet. The sheer power of Mother Earth is astounding, and it demonstrates its full potential in the farthest reaches of the universe. 37 years ago, scientists detected one of the brightest stellar explosions in 400 years. The supernova, named SN 1987A, occurred in the Large Magellanic Cloud, a nearby galaxy about 168,000 light-years from Earth. It was the first supernova observed by modern astronomers. SN 1987A is also the closest stellar explosion we've seen in decades. As the star depleted its nuclear fuel, it could no longer withstand its gravitational forces, leading to a catastrophic collapse and subsequent explosion. Peaking at about 250 million suns worth of energy, SN 1987A was an incredibly bright event, visible to the naked eye from Earth. It remained visible for several months. Hubble studies have revealed a dense ring of gas surrounding the supernova, glowing in optical light with a diameter of about 1 light-year. To put this into perspective, if you were to embark on a journey traveling at the speed of light toward the outer edge of our solar system, the Oort cloud, it would take approximately 1.87 years to reach that goal. Remarkably, this ring existed for at least 20,000 years before the star's explosion. The burst of ultraviolet light generated during the supernova event energized the gas in the ring, causing it to glow for several decades. While this event seems hard to top, the universe has seen even more powerful phenomena: gamma-ray bursts. Gamma-ray bursts, GRBs, are extraordinarily energetic events observed in the universe. They are believed to occur when massive stars undergo intense transformations, such as core collapse or binary system mergers involving neutron stars or black holes. These events release enormous amounts of energy as gamma rays, the most energetic form of electromagnetic radiation. GRBs are the brightest events known in the universe, as bright as many supernovae or around 1,000,000 trillion times as bright as the Sun. In October 2022, an event of cosmic proportions shook the scientific community. Named BOAT, brightest of all time, a gamma-ray burst originating from the constellation Sagitta reached our solar system and registered significant readings on particle detectors aboard SWIFT and other satellites. This GRB, the brightest ever observed, had traveled an estimated 1.9 billion years to reach Earth. It is believed to have resulted from the birth of a new a dark opening shaped in the core of an enormous star that imploded under its own weight. The energy produced by the dark opening led to strong planes of particles that tore through the star, producing X-beams and gamma beams as they shot out into space. On the off chance that something is exceptionally brilliant, it's normally loaded with extreme amounts of energy. The force of this blast was extraordinary. The data gathered by the Fiery Gamma Space Telescope revealed the presence of photons with more than 100 million electron volts, over 50 times more energetic than visible light photons. When researchers attempt to reproduce random gamma-ray bursts, only 1 out of 10,000 long GRBs had about the same amount of energy as GRB 221009A. Researchers think blasts as energetic and as close to us as this one happen at a pace of less than 1 every 1,000 years. The impact of a gamma-ray burst hitting Earth would be devastating, leading to the annihilation of the ozone layer, global cooling, and the occurrence of acid rain. This terrible scenario would have serious ramifications for life on our planet. Researchers guess that gamma rays may have played a role in the late Ordovician extinction event approximately 440 million years ago, which resulted in a massive loss of marine life. This period showed characteristics associated with increased radiation, such as global cooling, suggesting a potential connection to gamma activity. So, a gamma ray burst can destroy life on Earth, and there's even the possibility that such an event happened before. However, specialists estimate that we have roughly 500 million years before encountering a significant threat from a gamma ray burst again. For a long time, GRBs were considered the most powerful class of blasts in the universe. However, they may not be the longest lasting. In a notable discovery announced on May 11, 2023, astronomers identified the most massive cosmic blast ever observed, named at 2021 LWX. This exceptional event has lasted for over 3 years, contrasting with the generally short duration of an ordinary supernova. What sets at 2021 LWX apart is its extraordinary brightness, 2 trillion times the Sun's luminosity. This blast outshines any known supernova by a factor of 10, and has nearly the same luminosity as a quasar. Since it's still ongoing, the overall energy output of this cosmic explosion should be much higher. The explosion itself was approximately 100 times larger than the planetary system. Researchers believe this colossal blast was caused by a black hole devouring a massive gas cloud thousands of times the size of our Sun. The black hole consumed parts of the cloud, triggering shock waves that spread through the remaining debris and the vast ring of dusty material surrounding the black hole. These events are particularly rare, and observing one of such magnitude has never happened before. Located about 8 billion light-years away in the constellation Vulpecula, at 2021 LWX occurred when the universe was estimated to be around 6 billion years old. A blast of this magnitude is beyond comparison with most known cosmic phenomena. If it were to happen near the edges of the Oort cloud, it could potentially destroy our entire solar system. Do you think it's possible that one day humans could develop a blast even more powerful than supernovae or gamma ray bursts? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned here for more content like this, and thank you for joining us on this journey.